Oh hey, didn't see you there. And welcome to a new series I'd like to call Anime in Real Life, aka Anime IRL. I'm not sure how recurring the series will be or how it will even be received, so it's still in the experimental phase, but nevertheless, I hope you look forward to what I do with it in the future. And the point of this new format is to take a look at some of anime's most famous concepts and see how they compare and diverge to their real world counterparts. And what better way to start this series of real world comparisons off than with something that doesn't actually exist? The Philosopher's Stone, Fullmetal Alchemist's most famous MacGuffin. Alleged a jewel with the power to rival the alchemy gods, the Philosopher's Stone is a semi-mythical artifact in FMA that's essentially the game genie of the world. While falling apart, use the stone to quick fix those bricks. Break your artery busted? Heal the arm from harm. Need some quick cash? Turn that tin pan into kin. Man. But outside of FMA, what is the Philosopher's Stone? What's the nature of the real-life inspiration behind the famous Red Rock? And how does it fare in relation to Fullmetal Alchemist? And that's what we're gonna look at today. But to understand that deep connection, we have to look at FMA at its core. How does the Philosopher's Stone tie into the story, or vice versa? And fair warning, there will be minor spoilers for the show, or both of them, I guess, so keep that in mind. The initial journey and primary motivator for the protagonist, Edward and Alphonse, is the acquisition of the stone. And if you're not familiar with why, it's so they can restore their bodies to their original states after a little tomfoolery. You know, just guys being dudes. The stone itself is treated as a rare, if not one of its kind commodity, as its power allows it to supersede the laws of nature. Normally, in the world of alchemy, the transmutation of matter is governed by the law of equivalent exchange, which is essentially, you can't make up your own shit, nor can you make your existing shit into gold if it doesn't have the atomic necessities to it. However, the Philosopher's Stone is like the Reality Stone, red color and Thanos quote and all. It's like a douche in a speeding BMW blasting the screamo music down a quaint suburban neighborhood. It doesn't care about the laws. It said it can make riches out of garbage, create new concepts entirely, probably help you evade your taxes, and yes, even heal no longer existing limbs. But there is a price to be paid. For one Philosopher's Stone of decent enough power to mash nuclear warheads, they require 2 cups of salt, 5 eggs, and about 100,000 human souls, which sounds like the second worst recipe to bring to your church potluck aside from potato salad with raisins. Who knew the original alchemists were aliens?
Don't get on that ship! The rest of the book, To Serve Men, it's a cookbook.
No! 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 Ah!
I don't like United Airlines either. As a plot device, it's a way of relating to the audience that there's a key to both the laws of the world and the means to break them, thus a moral barrier to be broken. It's also important to note that the story takes place during the equivalent of the state of the real world's 1910s, notably Germany. In terms of the technology and scientific progress, not the whole military state and killing a bunch of people stuff. Actually, maybe that stuff too. So, with all that in mind, how does FMA's Philosopher's Stone match up to the Philosopher's Stone to be found in our world's mythos? Well, believe it or not, it's both more complicated and much simpler in comparison at the same time. And you can kind of expect that from a concept that dates near the beginning of recorded history. And needless to say, the accounts of said history behind the mythology of literally doing the impossible is quite fascinating. You know, fascinating in the sense that you find archaic and obscure religious records of outdated thought processes interesting. And bear with me because I promise there is something of interest by the end of this lecture. Something that might be mildly dark but definitely hilarious. Okay, so the earliest written mentioning of the Philosopher's Stone was around 300 AD, and later on, it was claimed that the existence of the stone was revealed to Adam, the first man, by writer Elias Ashmole, whose name would definitely be given a bad time in the 90s school setting. It's also noted that Plato, the philosopher, not the clay you can make into anything, which would be weirdly fitting for this topic, theorized the world was made from something called the prima materia, which are the classical elements, entropy, ether, and all else ethereal that would be the basis of the creation of the world. In the early days of alchemy, a philosopher's stone could be created by the combining of the world's four elements, earth, fire, air, and water, with something called anima mundi, which is essentially the soul of the world, whatever that means. So yes, in a way, Captain Planet is a philosopher's stone.
Fire!
Wind, water,
Hot! Go planet!
Sometime after this, not after Captain Planet but Plato, you know, the guy, not the toy. Between 1 and 300 AD, the official process in making a philosopher's stone was coined. The magnum opus required the prima materia to rigorously be put through a lengthy chemical reaction in a distinguished lab. Of course, there are two main problems with this. One is 1 AD. The most advanced science they had back then was knowing that wooden ducks float. And two, remember what the prima materia actually consists of? I mean, sure, you can get water, earth, fire, and air together and make an avatar, but you're still missing a few non-corporeal things. Like, I'm not sure how you could get ether, but wait a few thousand years and you could probably get enough chaos from a typical Phillies game. Well, that didn't really stop them from trying anyway. The overall idea was that if they were doing it right, the material metals would change colors through the four main steps: black, white, yellow, and should everything turn out right, finally, red. Yep, that is where the scarlet in the stone originates. And here I thought it was just a design choice. You know, symbolism and all that shit. Next you gotta tell me that it was the Middle Ages where the world of alchemy really changed. The Middle Ages is where the world of alchemy really changed. No fucking way! Alchemists of back then began experiments in transmutation. It was theorized that metals were made of various combinations of the four elements, like gold was mostly air. So what they essentially did was theoretical chemistry for dummies, taking metals and applying the elements to them, believing the addition or rearranging of the metal's components would change the metal entirely. For example, lead, which was considered mostly earth, would have air applied to it to try to get gold. And there was a whole process for it that's outlined in the text of Alchemist, but I like to imagine they just blew on it really hard. It's in this process that, had it succeeded, another material would have manifested from it as a residual product. It was called Zerion, and it was mostly described as a red powder. But it wasn't just any old red powder, it was supposedly a byproduct of, you guessed it, the Philosopher's Stone. So this was the first account of quote-unquote actual evidence of the stone. You know, it couldn't have been highly oxidated shavings or some other unknown material or something. Nope, it was clearly the proof of man's capability of playing God. Which, if you ask me, is already achieved when we selectively beat sea monkeys, but what do I know? Since then, there have been numerous accounts and debunks of these transmutations achieving such high feats as turning ordinary metals to precious ones. And I don't think I need to tell you which argument ultimately came out on top. But still, alchemy persisted. In fact, in the 1600s, the Philosopher's Stone was given a logo. I guess it had a good marketing team. And it would eventually become a staple in alchemy in general. Tell me if this looks familiar. That's right, this logo meant to represent the Philosopher's Stone looks a lot like the transmutation circles in the show. And that's not quite where it stops either. There was a name called Alkahest meant as a synonym or alternative for the Philosopher's Stone. In FMA, alkahestry is a derivative of typical alchemy, with its methods, philosophies, and means differing from the latter, but resulting in similar effects. By the way, Alkahest was coined by none other than Paracelsus, also known as Theophrastus von Hohenheim. I actually have a list of alternative names given to the Philosopher's Stone over the centuries right here, which is kind of fitting considering the numerous forms and shapes the Philosopher's Stone takes in the show. If you'll just indulge me. You have some basic Latin names like Draco Elixir, Rex Regum, Aqua Benedicta, but then you have some more interesting ones like Adam, which makes sense, he's the first man and the Philosopher's Stone is supposed to be made of the first materials of the world. And then you have something like Arcanum and Chaos, which are basic stuff, I guess. Then you have Crocus, which if you know flower language, it means new beginning. So the Philosopher's Stone is a new beginning. Pandora, I'm not gonna open that box of worms. Phoenix, which is also pretty interesting, just revitalize your life, rise from the ashes, that kind of stuff. But then you have something interesting. The most interesting one I found was Thesaurus, which, like, Thesaurus. So you have this whole list of names that are synonyms for the Philosopher's Stone, and one of the names is just synonym. And it does make sense because the Philosopher's Stone can make other things into basically just alternative synonyms, right? Crazy. Oh, and when I say the stone took many forms in the show, I didn't mean only the show. According to records, the stone could look like a variety of things, from varied colors to degrees of fineness, to even having a physical being or not. Yeah, it's weird to say the least, and arguably the most important part between these connecting threads. You see, alchemy has various branches, like how religions have various sects, or like how the Attack on Titan fandom reacts to Attack on Titan. In esoteric Hermetic alchemy and certain Asian-based alchemy, the search of the Philosopher's Stone was more geared toward the search towards oneself. Yeah, essentially the Philosopher's Stone was in you all along, or at least it's your soul. And this is a story I promised you earlier, and trust me, it is a doozy. Now, keep in mind that what I'm about to tell you is purely based on rumors from already archaic records, and the details aren't verified, have never been verified, and will likely stay unverified. But it's still really funny to speculate. Okay, first off, you need to know this man, Nicholas Flamel. He was born in 1330 and died in 1418, so he lived a good 88 years. He was also French, and believe it or not, that's not the weirdest thing about him. In life, Flamel was most known for his writing, philanthropy, and alchemy. After his death though, he's pretty much only known for the alchemy. That's because word spread that he actually achieved the impossible. He made a Philosopher's Stone. Now again, these are rumors at minimum, and legends at best. But the circumstances did point to it. He was considerably wealthy, enough to be a philanthropist in the 14th century, and lived a long life, while his wife was said to have been granted immortality. Which, sure. And here's where it gets interesting. Remember that in Hermetic alchemy, you find the Philosopher's Stone in the soul. Well, Flamel was born in 1330, and Edward was about 16 when he discovered how to make a stone. It's the mass death of countless souls. So if you do the math, Flamel was 16 in 1346. What major world event occurred in 1346? 25 to 50 million men, women, and children died to the bubonic plague. Okay, not all in 1 year, but a considerable amount of people still went beyond the mortal coil sooner than expected. There's a lot of writings and speculation of Flamel's later life, after 1353 when the epidemic ended, but there's very little to note about his first 20 or so years. It's claimed that he made the Philosopher's Stone in the 1380s and made silver and gold then, but that's still pretty sus. And just to reiterate, I'm not accusing Flamel of anything. I'm just pointing out a very glaring coincidence. Though, I'm sure Flamel's immortal wife won't send cease and desist letters to me anyway. Though if I end up dead sometime after this video is out, know something's up. By the way, to tie everything up, Hermetic alchemy was named after Hermes, the god of, among a lot of things, alchemy. And his rod is famously called the caduceus. If it looks familiar, that's because it inspired this symbol, which represents FMA's Philosopher's Stone and can be seen on the Elric brothers. And the name of the symbol? Flamel. Fitting because Nicholas Flamel was once likened to the caduceus by Isaac Newton. And I don't think I can top all that. I went into the script with the idea of a neat little video of Fullmetal Alchemist and a cute little rock taken in inspiration to some cool real-world mythology. I came out of it with a hell of a lot of research and fun historical anecdotes. And maybe a hit on me, I don't know. Heck, there were things I didn't even get to cover because they technically weren't part of the video's topic, and the non-sequitur things I did look over were just too fascinating to omit. There's just something to really enjoy about linking the true-to-life origins to the art I love. And hopefully I taught you something about the real world of alchemy and might want to, well, teach. Fullmetal Alchemist is a great show, with wonderful characters, a deep story, and a rich setting. and now I know it has an impressive build on the lore and complex of its premise, not just with the Philosopher's Stone, but the entire alchemical system. There are minor details that only pedantic tools like me may make note of, but it's still impressively layered and well thought out. It's very worthy of being the gold standard. And that's my time for the first anime IRL. I really do hope you liked it. Like I said, it is still in the experimental phases, and I'm still trying to figure everything out. But regardless, I do have other plans for the series going forward. Let me know if you have an idea for a topic you'd like me to cover, and who knows, maybe there is something else out there that I can ramble about that I'm not aware of. But now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go into hiding for a bit. I can't take a risk with Miss Flammel possibly taking a hit out on me.